Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I will be doing another ranking of Star Wars books. This ranking will be a little bit different than the other ones I've done. I've done rankings of my top 10 favorite Star Wars canon novels. I've done a ranking of my top 5 Star Wars Legends series, and then a ranking of my top 5 Legends standalone novels. Today, I will be doing a ranking specifically of my top 5 Star Wars authors. These are people that I've been following their books for a long time. I love everything they write, and I just can't wait to get more. And the only caveat that I'll put on this is if there's an author that I've loved a book, but they've only written one novel for Star Wars, I didn't include them on this list because I don't have a lot that I can serve as a reference point for them, and I don't want to talk about them in this way and then see them release a book that I haven't really liked, and it brings me down on that author. So I'm focusing on authors that have written multiple novels for Star Wars that I've read and that I've liked almost everything that they've written. And so the number 5 on my list for favorite Star Wars novel authors is Michael Stackpole. Now, Michael Stackpole is no stranger to the expanded universe in that he wrote 5 of the 10 X-Wing novels. He wrote the first 4, and then he wrote one that happened later on. And he is incredibly talented at writing space battles and also at writing tie-in fiction in general. He also does work with other franchises that are incredible. He's written fantasy that I've really enjoyed, and so I highly recommend Michael Stackpole. But his Star Wars X-Wing novels, the ones that everyone goes to, he also wrote I, Jedi, which was the first and one of now only 2 Star Wars, man, I keep thinking Star Trek because that's what I've been reading recently, Star Wars adult novels to feature first-person narrative. And the other book was by Kevin Hearn. It was Heir to the Jedi, and I just don't think it was that good of a book. But I, Jedi is a fantastic first-person written book featuring Corran Horn, who you will know from the X-Wing series. He is just fantastically written in that book, and it is a standalone book, but it also kind of ties into the Jedi Academy trilogy by Kevin J. Anderson, so it serves so many purposes, and it's just so good. But he also wrote 2 of the books in the New Jedi Order series, and I really enjoyed his books in the New Jedi Order. It really got me pumped up after reading Vector Prime. But he's my number 5 favorite Star Wars author. If I'm doing my math correctly, I believe that he's written 7 or 8 Star Wars novels, and I believe I've read all of them. I believe he's written 8 Star Wars novels, and I've read all of them, and I enjoy reading his works, whether it's Star Wars or even fantasy or sci-fi that he's done. So I highly, and he's a good starting point if you want to start reading Star Wars novels. The second author I'll discuss is from a totally different era of writing, and that is Claudia Gray. Now, if you've been reading novels recently or keeping up with Star Wars in recent years, Claudia Gray is no stranger to Star Wars, as she has currently written 5 Star Wars novels with a 6th on the way coming in January. She wrote the Lost Stars, which just blew up the fandom. Everyone was talking about it back in 2015. It was the Star Wars novel to love. And ironically, that's hers that I like the least. I think that she's a better writer when she writes adult novels than when she does young adult. She also wrote Bloodline, an adult novel featuring Leia, which I think is absolutely fantastic and is in my top 10 Star Wars novels. Then she also wrote Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which is a fantastic novel, and I believe just missed my top 10. It is a YA, and so I think it's weaker in its style of writing than Bloodline was, but it was an improvement, in my opinion, on Lost Stars, and it ties in so well to other Star Wars projects, including The Last Jedi. And then she wrote one of my all-time favorite Star Wars novels, Master and Apprentice, which I think was just the right book at the right time for the right audience. She just knocked it out of the park, and I loved reading every minute of that novel, and she just absolutely nailed the voice of Qui-Gon. There are very few authors who can do that. Jude Watson did a very good job back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I believe that James Luceno did okay in Cloak of Deception, but Claudia Gray nailed Qui-Gon in a way that no other author really can. And then she most recently wrote Into the Dark, part of the High Republic, which was YA, and I didn't love that book, but I thought it was very well written, and I thought that she did an excellent job handling it, and I absolutely cannot wait for her book, The Fallen Star, because it's part of the adult line from Del Rey, and I've already loved the first 2 novels from the High Republic in the adult line, so I think it's going to be fantastic. So she's my number 4 favorite author. I've read all 5 of her Star Wars books. I have not read any of her other books outside of Star Wars. And I don't think I would enjoy them as much because I understand that her writing style gets a bit different. But I would love to eventually read some of her books, particularly her 1,000 Pieces of You series. And then my next author, my number 3 on my list, is James Luceno. James Luceno is one of those authors that spans a decent amount of time. He started writing in about 2000 for Star Wars and had written all the way through about 2016. So he has a long swath of writing. Not the longest swath on this list, but a long swath. And he just turned in so many good books. He wrote 3 books for the New Jedi Order series. I thought all 3 of them were well written. They weren't my favorite in the series, but they were all well written. He also wrote Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader, which I thought was a excellently written novel that felt like a video game, and I loved reading that book. It really felt like I was reading a chapter out of Force Unleashed or something. It was just such a fun book to read. He also wrote Cloak of Deception, which I think was my first Star Wars novel I ever read, and I just have such nostalgia for that book, and I love the political intrigue in that book. He also wrote Labyrinth of Evil, which I think is one of his weaker novels, but I still think it's a fun read. And then he also wrote Darth Plagueis, which you ask anyone is considered Star Wars literature. It is not just a tie-in novel, it is a true piece of literary content that is valuable to society. It is so well written, it explores so many good themes. It was perfectly well done. It is one of those books that, until it is overwritten, it really does work almost in the canon, even though it was written in Legends, because it's just that good. And then he has also written some more recent novels. He wrote Millennium Falcon, which I will admit is one Star Wars book I have not read. That's one of the few I'm still trying to get. And then he also wrote Tarkin, which I felt was one of his weaker books, but tied in well with Catalyst, which is my favorite of his books. Catalyst is, in my opinion, the best example of tie-in fiction ever. And it just did everything I wanted it to do, and I love reading. I've reread that book 4 times. It's so good. It's so good. And so Catalyst is a fantastic read, and as much as everything else of James Luceno's, and he was just consistently pretty good, and I always enjoy reading him. I'm very sad that he hasn't turned in a book in a while, but I believe that's because of his health, but I will always enjoy going back to reread his novels. The number 2 on my list, it will surprise people that it's at the number 2 spot, the number 1 spot, but it will not surprise people that it is on the list, and that is Timothy Zahn. And you ask any Star Wars fan, any Star Wars book fan, they will tell you Timothy Zahn's on the list because he's just that good. And Timothy Zahn is now, I believe, working on his 15th or 16th novel. He's written so many books, so I can't get into all of them right now. He has the original Thrawn trilogy, the Hand of Thrawn duology. He has Outbound Flight and Survivor's Quest, and he has Allegiance and Choices of One and Scoundrels, and then he wrote the New Thrawn trilogy and the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy. And I don't believe I'm missing anything in there, but that's a lot of books. I mean, he's like 15 or 16 novels, and the newest book is coming out in November, which is when this video is releasing, Lesser Evil, which I am very excited for. And Timothy Zahn just gets the overall feel of a Star Wars movie. All of his books have either movie level quality in like I can envision this happening on the big screen, and his newer books have the television, like I could see this being an episode of The Mandalorian or a couple episodes of The Mandalorian. His books just feel like Star Wars in a way that I just can't say anyone else does. And so I enjoy everything he's written, some more than others. I personally love his Hand of Thrawn duology. I think that's amazing. His original Thrawn trilogy is amazing, and his newest Thrawn trilogy is great. I still don't know how I'd rank the Ascendancy trilogy up there, but it's been a fantastic read as well. But Timothy Zahn just... There's a reason he's the best-selling Star Wars author, and it's because he just nails it every single time. He just is a fantastic author, and the way he writes original characters, the way he writes new characters, the way he writes prequel characters, the way he writes sequel-ish era characters, don't want to go into spoilers. The way he writes all the different kinds of characters are all just wonderful, and so that's why he's my number 2. My number 1 author is going to surprise some people, because if we're talking about Star Wars novels, he's written the least of anyone on my list. He's only written 3 Star Wars novels, and then he's written a short story collection, and he's participated in a lot of the short stories and novellas that have come out. And that would be John Jackson Miller. If you've ever watched anything on my channel or looked at any of my book reviews, I gush over John Jackson Miller and his writing. He's my favorite tie-in author, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or anything else he does. He's just an amazing tie-in author. And his works include Knight Errant, which is a fantastic look at communism versus capitalism set in the Star Wars universe. And you'll be like, the words communism and capitalism are never used. But Jedi and Sith are. And the Jedi and Sith represent communism and capitalism in that book. And then you have the different types of Sith in the Lost Tribe of the Sith, which is just an excellent exploration of what it means to be Sith and what it means to be stranded on this planet. And then you have other books of his, which 2 of his books are my 2 favorite Star Wars books, which you have A New Dawn, which ties into the Rebels series, and it is just a fantastic example of tie-in books, and it is also a fantastic, wonderful example of just not having much that you can do and doing a lot with it. He could not do that much in that story, and yet he was able to pull off so much in that story. But his magnum opus, the book that I think he's currently known for and the book that he will be known for the rest of his career, and justifiably so, is Kenobi. Kenobi is my favorite Star Wars novel of all time. It's up there in my favorite books just of all time, outside of Star Wars. Kenobi is a fantastic read. It's a fantastic book. It is a space western, and it was very unique, and it handles the story of Obi-Wan on Tatooine without really using Obi-Wan. It's just so brilliant put together. Every word in that book was just amazingly chosen. And it does have a bit of a controversy in there, and even though I disagree with John Jackson Miller on some of his choices in the book, I think that he handled them flawlessly. And I think that even though I disagree, I can still be okay with it because it's just so well written. And that book, I will say, even a non-Star Wars fan can read that book and enjoy it because it really isn't a sci-fi. It really is a space western. And so that book is just amazing. And he, overall, I gush about everything he does. If you haven't read his Star Trek stuff amazing, but I can't talk about that. I have to focus on Star Wars. His Star Wars books are truly amazing. And if you've read his comics, his Knight Errant comics are great. His Knights of the Old Republic comics are great. His short stories in the From a Certain Point of Views are great. And his novella, part of the Canto Bight series, is the best Star Wars novella. Hands down. It's amazing. You should read it. So that's why John Jackson Miller is my number 1. I think that people will agree on me including Claudia Gray and Tim Zahn and James Luceno, but I don't think many people would include John Jackson Miller as their number 1 but I hope he comes back and does more because I just love everything he does. So let me know what your top 5 Star Wars authors are. Do you have different authors than me? Do you have the same in different positions? I'm curious to see what you'd say. If you like this video, please like it and share it with your friends, and please subscribe to the channel to see more content. I have lots of videos on Star Wars and other properties. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.